What could be more shocking than the moment when a child who was thought to be missing suddenly realizes that they have been found? Imagine years of loneliness and fear, and then there are people standing before you who promise to take you home. These children didn't even hope for rescue, and their reaction, a mix of horror and relief, touches the soul of everyone who witnesses it. My name is Knox, and today I will show you the most emotional reunion stories you can imagine, but the most astonishing story I saved for last. The teenager, lost for a whole 10 years, simply could not believe that he was found. These are all real stories with genuine tears, fear, and happiness. Are you ready to dive into the world of real dramatic rescues? Then let's get started. In October 2021, Australia held its breath as it watched the search for 4-year-old Cleo Smith, who went missing from a tent at a campsite in a remote part of Western Australia. That I want to die. It was an ordinary day off for the Smith family, but on October 16th, their lives were turned upside down. At 6 a.m., Ellie Smith, Cleo's mother, woke up and realized that the girl was not beside her. At first, she thought that Cleo Smith had just stepped out of the tent, but when she searched the entire campground, she was overcome with horror. The call to the police was made immediately, and one of the largest search operations in the history of Australia began. The police and volunteers scoured the area, but found nothing. One day passed, then two, then weeks. The news showed the tears of the parents. Their despair was evident in every interview. Discussions were taking place across the country about what could have happened to the little girl. Was she alive? Where was she being held? 18 days passed, and it seemed that the chances of her rescue were almost gone. But then, early in the morning on November 3rd, the police burst into the kidnapper's house. It was a reclusive man named Terrence Kelly who had been hiding the girl. Cleo was sitting in a room, quietly playing with toys when they found her. Her reaction amazed everyone. She simply said, "My name is Cleo." As if nothing unusual had happened in the past few days. Her calmness was astonishing. It was as if she knew she would definitely be found. This was a moment that shook the entire country. A car. The parents, who were prepared for the worst, could not hold back their tears of joy as they embraced their girl. The moment of reunion became a symbol for millions of people watching this drama. Local residents decorated the town with balloons and posters, congratulating the Smith family on the wonderful rescue. September 2024. In the state of Ohio, USA, a large-scale operation codenamed Homecoming unfolded, forever changing the fates of dozens of families. I'm really mad. For several weeks, law enforcement agencies, along with volunteers and private detectives, searched for 32 missing children. Some of them had gone missing very recently, while others had been abducted years earlier. One of the most touching cases involved 12-year-old Lily, who went missing from her own home 2 years ago. She was kidnapped by a man she met online. For 2 years, she lived under constant fear and control, not knowing if she would ever be able to return to her family. When the police burst into the kidnapper's house, Lily barely understood that it was a rescue. She couldn't believe her eyes. At that moment, the girl, who had been separated from her loved ones for 2 long years, felt for the first time in a long while that her life belonged to her again. Lily's story is just one of 32 stories within the operation. Another boy, Michael, was found 3 years after his abduction. He had been taken to another state and lived with his abductors, unaware that he was being searched for. When he was reunited with his mother, her cry of joy could be heard throughout the area. This moment became a turning point for all the children who finally understood that they had returned home. Chantel McLaughlin was abducted in the summer of 2022, when her mother left her in the car for a few minutes to go into a store. It was an ordinary grocery trip, but in an instant, Chantel's mother's life changed forever. Returning to the car, she discovered that her daughter was gone. Panic overwhelmed her instantly. She called the police, who promptly began the search. Fortunately, one of the random passers-by noticed an unfamiliar man hurriedly leaving the parking lot while holding a little girl close to him. A notable detail that helped find the girl was the bright toy that Chantel McLaughlin was holding. Thanks to this description, the police quickly determined the direction in which the abductor was moving. And just 4 hours later, Chantel was found in the suburbs, hidden in an abandoned house. When the police brought the girl to her mother, Chantel barely understood what had happened. She was scared, but as soon as she saw a familiar face, her little heart began to beat faster. She threw herself into her mother's arms. This moment became the most important in their family's life. Chantel McLaughlin's mother could not believe that it all ended so quickly. She remembers that day as the most terrifying yet simultaneously the happiest moment of her life. In 1991, 11-year-old J.C. Lee Dugard was abducted on her way to school near South Lake Tahoe, California. She disappeared in an instant, in a car with an unfamiliar man and woman who took her in an unknown direction. Her search continued for years, but no traces were ever found. 18 years passed. In August 2009, J.C. was found, and her story became one of the most remarkable in the United States. Her abductors, Philip and Nancy Garrido, kept her locked up in the backyard of their home, in a specially built tent, where J.C. gave birth to 2 children fathered by her captor. Living in constant fear and isolation, J.C. Lee Dugard resigned herself to the fact that she would never return to her family. Her rescue was accidental. The police noticed the strange behavior of Philip and Nancy Garrido with the 2 girls and decided to conduct a check. When J.C., then a 29-year-old woman, saw real police officers for the first time in 18 years, she struggled to comprehend that this moment was reality. She had been rescued. Her first meeting with her mother was incredibly emotional. J.C. could not believe that her nightmare was finally over. It was not just a reunion with her family. It was a return to life after nearly 2 decades of fear and horror. Elizabeth Smart was abducted in 2002, when she was just 14 years old. This occurred in her home in Salt Lake City, Utah. At night, when everyone was asleep, a man named Brian David Mitchell broke into the house and threatened the girl with a knife, forcing her to leave the bedroom and go with him. "Get out of here." He took her to the mountains, where he and his accomplice Wanda Barzee held Elizabeth captive for 9 months. For her family, it was a time of horror. The media extensively covered her disappearance, and the parents did not stop searching, organizing press conferences and distributing flyers. The entire town was immersed in this tragedy. Thousands of people joined the search. But despite all efforts, Elizabeth remained missing, and with each passing week, hope dwindled. Elizabeth was subjected to physical and psychological abuse, lived in terrible conditions, and was forced to conceal her identity. However, after 9 months, on March 12, 2003, everything changed. Elizabeth was accidentally spotted on the street with Mitchell and Barzee. Thanks to citizens who recognized her from numerous photographs, the police responded quickly and apprehended the abductors. The moment of her rescue was a true shock for Elizabeth. She could hardly believe that her suffering was over. The reunion with her parents was filled with tears of joy. For her family, this day became the most important event in their lives. Elizabeth was able to return home, where she had been awaited for so long. The disappearance of little Madeline McCann in 2007 became one of the most resonant and mysterious stories of recent decades. Madeline disappeared from the apartment where her family was staying at the Portuguese resort Praia de Luz. She was only 3 years old. Her parents, Kate and Jerry McCann, went out to dinner with friends. leaving Madeleine McCann and her younger twin brothers sleeping in a room just a few meters from the restaurant. When they returned to the room, Madeleine was gone. The parents immediately raised the alarm, and searches began, which over time turned into one of the most high-profile missing child cases in the world. The search spanned all of Europe, but no trace of the girl was found. More than 16 years have passed since her disappearance, but the hope of finding her has not died. In 2021, new leads emerged in this case. German authorities announced that they are investigating a person suspected of abducting Madeleine McCann. This news revived hope for her family. Jerry and Kate McCann continue to hope that they will one day be able to see their daughter again. The story of Madeleine remains a symbol of pain and unresolved issues, as the girl has still not been found. But it also serves as a reminder that even after so many years, parents do not lose hope. For them, every day is a wait for that moment when they can hug their daughter again. The story of Kamaya Mobley. This is an extraordinary case of the abduction of a newborn baby that lasted nearly 18 years. Kamaya was abducted from a hospital in Florida just hours after her birth by a woman who posed as a nurse. Her biological parents, Shonara and Craig, experienced shock and years of uncertainty. For them, that day became a nightmare that seemed like it would never end. Kamaya grew up not knowing that her mother, Gloria Williams, was actually her abductor. Gloria raised Kamaya as her own daughter, and Kamaya had no idea that her real parents had been searching for her all this time. Everything changed in 2017 when Kamaya, who was 18 at the time, learned that her life had been a lie, when she decided to take a DNA test. This was a real shock for both Kamaya and her parents. When she first met Shonara and Craig, it was a moment of deep shock and joy at the same time. Kamaya suddenly found herself between two worlds. The world in which she lived and loved the woman who raised her, and the world where her real parents were eagerly waiting for her. It was a time Kamaya Mobley's reunion with her biological parents was painful, but also filled with hope. Carlos Sanchez was abducted when he was 7 years old. He spent many years away from his family. The kidnappers took him to another state and forced him to live under a false identity, not allowing him the opportunity to contact his family. For Carlos, these years were filled with fear and isolation. He was told that his parents were no longer looking for him, and the boy had almost come to terms with this thought. But everything changed when one of the teachers noticed that Carlos looked too depressed and withdrawn. His suspicions led to the police starting an investigation. Approval was granted. It soon became clear that Carlos was actually a boy who had been reported missing for 10 years. When Carlos was reunited with his family, he could hardly believe what was happening. He had not seen his parents since he was abducted, and at first, he could not understand how everything could change so suddenly. His family, having lost him for a long 10 years, could finally embrace their son again. This moment became the beginning of a new life for them. James Chun was abducted at the age of 5 in a shopping mall in Singapore. His parents were distracted for literally just a few seconds, and that was enough for the abductor to grab the child and disappear into the crowd. For his parents, it was a moment of absolute horror. The child vanished before their eyes, and they could do nothing. The police immediately began the search, and thanks to surveillance cameras, they were able to track the kidnapper's route. After a few hours, James was found in a car that the kidnapper was about to steal. When his parents saw him, they could not hold back their tears. The boy was safe, but he barely understood what had happened. Wow! That day was both tragic and triumphant for them. They almost lost their son, but on the same day, they found him again. These stories show that even in the most challenging situations, one should not lose hope. Missing children can be found, even after years of separation. Each of these stories is unique, but they are all filled with incredible pain, patience, and the joy of reunion. And if you also love interesting stories, can write scripts, edit, or voice videos, then join us on Telegram. The bot is linked in the description. I would be happy to collaborate. Thank you for watching.